Hey there, I'm Kathy from fabulesslyfrugal.com, and I just finished making some yummy donuts. And guess what? My house doesn't stink because I cooked them in the air fryer. These are not made using the processed chemicals that you can find in the grocery aisle in a can. This is made from scratch, just 7 ingredients, and they're so easy, so good. You ready? Let's go. So the first thing we're gonna do is get our yeast ready. And what you're gonna need is some lukewarm water. Now the trick to doing this is an instant read thermometer. So if you've got one, snag it. If you don't, I've got a link below of the one I've been using for years and it's still lasting. So I just microwave this for about a minute and it usually comes to about 110, 115 degrees. Of course, microwaves all vary, so your results could be different. If you overheat your milk, you could just let it cool down, no problem. This is when this thermometer comes in really handy. You could also do the test on your wrist and just make sure it's that lukewarm feeling. You always want to make sure your yeast is bubbly before you actually use it with your mix. Okay, got the milk. I am just going to stir it around a little bit because microwaves don't necessarily heat evenly. And then we will take the instant read, make sure it's at about 115, 110. And there we go, it's about 113. I like it. Let's move forward. So to start, we're gonna do 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. Now I'm using instant yeast. I'm just using a tablespoon and going a little under, so I'm not super particular about my measurements there. Then I'm gonna whisk it up and add in a teaspoon of sugar. Now this is just a 1/2 teaspoon that I have, so I'm doing it twice. Now, while your yeast is setting up, you could go ahead and crack 1 egg, whisk that up, and then melt 4 tablespoons or a 1/2 stick of butter. Now the yeast is looking nice and bubbly, so we are good to move forward. If you don't see those bubbles after about 5-10 minutes, then you might want to do another batch of your yeast. And then we've got a 1/4 cup of sugar we're going to throw in, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. There's your whisked egg, that's 1 egg. And I'm going to go ahead and mix that up really quick first, and then I'm going to throw in my hot melted butter as I'm mixing. And then the recipe calls for 3 cups of flour, but we're going to start with just the first 2 cups. Always remember to dump into your measuring cup and then level it off so we get just the right amount. And then go ahead and mix that up. Now on my mixer, I usually like to scrape the sides after the initial mix. And then keep going, and we're gonna throw in that last cup of flour. And silly me, I knew this wasn't working out quite right. It's because I wasn't using my dough hook. So get that dough hook on, and then we're gonna go ahead and knead the dough for about 5 minutes. Now your dough should be sticky to the touch, but you shouldn't have dough really left on your finger. So if you need to add maybe up to a 1/2 cup more of flour, go for it. And then once it's all mixed up, it's ready to rise. Depending on the type of yeast you have and your conditions, it could take 30-45 minutes. But you will know when it's done when you press your finger in and the indentation stays there. So now that we are ready, I'm going to prepare my surface. I usually spray some olive oil, sprinkle on some flour, and then let's get rolling. So you'll want to roll this about a 1/4 inch thick. Now you could use cookie cutters or just grab some things around the house. This is what has worked perfectly for me. You want 3 inches wide and then 1 inch for the inside of your circle for those cute donut holes. And then go ahead and cut. Now this first cut is when they always turn out so beautiful. So get as many as you can on there. Then go ahead and lay those out on some parchment paper so they can do a little more rising. And then blend up your extra dough. This is how I like to knead it, just pulling it inwards, stretching it through, just helping things get incorporated again, but it won't look as pretty. Now I'm going to show you what happens if we go thicker on the dough. So these are thicker little donuts and they take a little bit longer to bake, and sometimes when I do this, they're a little more doughy inside. So I'm gonna test it out and I'll let you know at the end. So check out at the end and you can see how those fat ones look. Now at the end, I just make some donut holes. They aren't necessarily pretty. That's okay, they still taste fantastic. So go ahead and let those donuts rise for about 15 minutes. They aren't necessarily gonna double in size, but you will see a little more fluffing. Go ahead and lightly spray your air fryer basket. Gently place those donuts in the basket. I can fit 5 in mine. And then give those tops a light spray. And then we're gonna cook it at 350 for 4 minutes. Now while that's baking, you are gonna whip up some icing. So you'll start with 6 tablespoons of melted butter, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 cups of powdered sugar, and just mix that in. It's gonna turn into a kind of a thick paste. Once you get that in, throw in about 2 tablespoons of hot water. Get that blended and smooth, and then you'll see here it's still a little bit too thick. So I'm gonna add in about another tablespoon of hot water till I get it to the consistency that I want. So it's gonna be nice and thin, but not to the point where it's super watery. Now, if things thicken up in between batches, you can always throw it in the microwave for about 15 seconds to thin it out. First batch came out a little bit light, so I'm gonna run it for about 2 more minutes. Now those look nice and brown, so I'm gonna just dump them on a cookie rack. Now here's my fat ones. They're so cute. I'm gonna go ahead and cook those up, and this time I'm gonna just cook them for 5 minutes since my air fryer's a little bit heated up. Now that these have had a minute to cool, I'm gonna go ahead and dump them in the icing. I'm just using some tongs, lightly grabbing them. Lay them out on the cookie rack so they can finish cooling and that glaze can harden up. Oh my goodness, these look so good. Believe me, they are. And now that next batch is done. Let's take a look at those. And they look perfect. Third batch going in. This time just doing it for 4 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and ice my chunky donuts. And there, last batch looking nice and brown. Now I'm gonna just do all the donut holes together. 4 minutes on this go round. And look at those. Now since my icing is getting low, I'm just dumping all the donut holes in there and stirring them up with a spatula. I'm gonna let those lay out to cool down, and let's go check out the results. Remember, this is the batch that was the second roll and a bit thicker. Let's see how they turned out. In the past, they've been a little doughy, but this time I cooked them a little bit longer. Let's see how they look. It's chewy. Oh, yum. It looks good. I have people wanting to taste test. So the thicker ones I would cook as your first or second batch and not the last batch, because then your air fryer will probably burn the tops and not cook the inside all the way. At least that's what I found with my air fryer. Finished product, just like I told you. So good, you guys. So if you like what you see, go ahead and hit subscribe. I've got more air fryer recipes right here for you. Let me know what you would love to see made in the air fryer down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.